Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Pace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, Basketball Hall of Famer Artis Gilmore.
My brother
Frankie. How are you, pal? How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Got your JU cap on?
I got my JU cap on.
Nice.
Our guest today is Mr. Artis Gilmore, Basketball Hall of Famer. We're going to talk about the Final Four. We're going to talk about some recollections he had of that game, the final game against UCLA. He's going to be and I've known him for 53 years.
Well, Jacksonville U, you says it all.
Jacksonville U. So I'm sporting my JU hat.
And rightfully so. I got to ask Artis who he thinks the greatest of all time was. I got to ask him that question.
You know, I played soccer and baseball at Jacksonville University. I'm proud that I pitched one inning. I pitched one inning in my Jacksonville University career. I gave up 3 runs. The coach yelled out, "Keep it up, Pace. You'll send them home happy yet."
Were you about a 10-run lead when they put you in?
13-0.
13-0.
13-0. When I went in 13-3 when I left. But we're speaking about Florida. What's with the Florida legislature firing the principal of the school because he showed a picture of
Michelangelo's David.
Michelangelo's David, which was sculpted sometime between 1507 and 1509 or something. What do you think?
I don't know, man. What do they want to do? I don't know. What do they call it? Banana hammock? They want to put on it? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you know, I all these complaints about woke and this woke, and I think that stuff is nonsense as well. But this is like the other way. It's like woke the other way. What are you going to start torturing people and to make them confess to being a witch and start burning them? I mean, what's next?
Yeah.
I mean, where are we going with this?
I mean, in reality, 11 and 12-year-olds are having sex by the time they're 13 or 14, you know.
Well, in Florida. I went to the University of Florida. I mean, I don't think they were too sheltered.
Well, there's Joe West.
Joe West. Let's find out what he thinks about it.
Who is currently a resident of Florida. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they should leave history alone.
Yeah.
Number one, I think that's a bad thing. I mean, if the 4 of us, Derek included, are old enough to remember when, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn was the wildest thing that was ever on television or the movies. And that's the first thing that was ever really looked at and they went, oh, that's so terrible. When actually it was one of the greatest lines in the history of movies.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we tinker with things that are none of our business. I think the statue is exactly what it is, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the real issue was that they showed it to kids who were considered underaged, and it was just a picture. It wasn't the statue itself. And if they explained what it was and who the artist was that created it, I don't see anything wrong with that.
So you think it's the context that maybe they showed it to them without
and how they did it. I'm not sure all the details of it, but that doesn't make sense that you want to destroy a piece of history or keep somebody from learning a piece of history, because some of the stuff, the artwork, the architect, the engineering of stuff in the past. If we're so stupid we're not paying attention to it, that's our fault. And if we're not teaching what it is, that's our fault. You can't. You need to learn from history. You don't need to forget what happened because, as Einstein said, the reason you keep failing is because you keep doing the same thing over and over and not changing it. So I have a real problem with ridiculing a professor or a teacher that wants to show what this statue was. I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I agree with you 300%. And I was lucky enough to be in Florence and see, you know, the David, the giant, as Michelangelo called him. And obviously, when you look at the statue, I mean, it's He didn't concentrate on the genitals. That's not what the statue's about. And if he did, he wouldn't have used an Irish model. It was sculpted by an Italian guy, but that's an Irish model. Somebody telling me.
Well, all of the artists of that era, the Renaissance era and before the Renaissance era, all of the great, mosaics and portraits and statues of the time all had nude.
Without a doubt. All nude. I mean, that's not the point of the work of art. It's a work of art, like Joe says. I mean, you can't tamper with history like that. I mean, who are we to... Well, never mind who are we. Who are the three parents of students that object to them seeing a picture of the David? That's being more than that.
Well, I think they were encouraged by Governor DeSantis, who then signed the law into effect about pornography. So, and I think that they're basing their speaking out on saying that it was pornographic in pursuit of this governor's dictation.
Well, wasn't there a judge who famously said, like, what is pornography? They wanted the definition. He says, I can't give you the definition, but I know it when I see it. Well, I know when I see it. That's not pornography. I mean, how could that be? To me, anyway. I mean, of course, I have a pretty...
You!
I have a very broad definition of what pornography is.
Well, let's talk about Natalie the Hairlip.
Well, let's not talk about Natalie the Hairlip. So,
does anybody know the ages of these kids where this was the
11,
problem?
11 and 12.
Okay. And so they weren't taking high school anatomy or something like that. So
no, it was an art class.
It was an art class. I don't. There again, it's art. It's been art for hundreds of years, and what is wrong with showing what it is?
It's been art for 500 years. Now it's pornography. Where are we going?
That's a wrong message to give our kids, and it's wrong for any government to dictate what the teachers can teach when that has been art for 500 years.
Yeah. Well, let me change the subject. What do you think about my pitching performance in 1971, Joe?
Well, as long as you kept the game under 2.5 hours, I'm happy.
Now that's
somebody asked me yesterday at the golf course. He said, "What do you think of these new speed up rules?" I said, "If I'd have known they were going to do that, I wouldn't have retired. I'd have stayed around a couple more years." I mean, they're playing these spring training games in 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, looks like Maddox is pitching.
Yeah,
he pitched.
And you know what? Maddox was the last pitcher I remember where when he batted and grounded out or made the last out, he walked right from first base right to the pitcher's mound. Somebody brought him his glove and he warmed up. The rest of them, they go back in the dugout and they take a bath and a shower and they go to the bathroom and they come out and it's ridiculous. Yeah. And that kind of stuff slows down the game too. But something they're not addressing is the time between innings. Because there's no reason that baseball can't use a split screen to show their commercials if the baseball players are ready to play and they're not back from the commercial time.
Yeah, well, the reason that they won't do that is primarily because of the advertisers. They may not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you have the capability of showing the advertising, don't mess up the game.
Yeah,
I remember I came out of a game in Tampa, Florida, and John Kruk asked me why I checked the player's bat, and he thought I was picking on the kid because he was a rookie. And I said, because you guys weren't back from commercial yet. And I actually told the kid, I said, I'm just checking this bat so we can wait for the commercial to come back. And the kid laughed, right? Well, everybody in the media thought I was picking on this kid because he was a rookie. And all I was doing was making it look like we were on time and we're doing our job and doing our due diligence to get but we were waiting for a TV commercial to come back. And it's just wrong. I remember we had playoff games where Frank Robinson was our boss years ago, and I said, Frank, it's cold. It's 40 degrees out here. Would you want your relief pitcher or your starting pitcher waiting 35 and 40 seconds for a TV commercial to come back? He said, absolutely not. And, I mean, that's one of the problems with this is they move the times to where the pitchers can't get out there and get ready because they don't know when they're going to start. And that's wrong.
Well, that brings me to another point. Pushing the times is one thing, But pushing the schedule into the World Series into November, that's another thing. I mean, it used to be the Fall Classic. It used to be over by October the 10th or the 15th. I think this year went to the 5th of November. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Joe? Baseball is a warm weather sport, relatively speaking. How can they play a game in 35 or 40 degree weather?
They can't do it well. First of all, they can't grip the baseball to make it spin the way they want to. Second of all, if they don't hit the ball on the sweet spot, it breaks their hands. So you're absolutely right. And here's another thing: if you got 3 or 4 games being played the same day, why is the Yankees and the Red Sox played at night in 40 degree weather when the games on the West Coast are played at 1 o'clock?
Well,
tell me that.
Yeah, don't make any sense.
And I'll tell you why. Because they want the prime time.
Yep.
And I don't know why the Players Association doesn't stand up to them and say, nope, the game in New York's at 40 degrees. We're going to play it in the afternoon at 1 o'clock where it's 60 degrees.
Well, the Players Association's getting their cut of the TV money as well.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the money anyway.
Well,
now when you let television run your game, you've messed up the game because television doesn't know anything about the game. And you can see that when they start games at 3 and 4 o'clock, and there's a shadow between the pitcher and the hitter.
Yeah,
that should never happen.
Well, that used to happen in the old days too, because I remember Yankee Stadium when they were playing the World Series games in the afternoon. The shadow used to creep out and get past the pitcher in about the 4th or 5th inning.
On that note, with the television, with the World Series games when they used to be played in the afternoon, I can remember being in school and they'd announce over the loudspeaker, if anybody's interested, the Dodgers are winning 3-2 in the 4th inning or whatever, because we were in school.
Right.
By television money pushing these World Series games shown at night, sometimes during the week, where kids can't stay up to watch them, doesn't that affect the history of the game? I mean, doesn't that a lot of kids are going to get turned off and turned to other sports because they can't get to watch what do you think about that, Joe?
They've been told that many times. They're losing a whole generation of fans. They should play every weekend World Series game, Saturday or Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, of course. They'll be
and at 1 o'clock in the city that it's in, not 1 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah, but
you follow what I'm saying? I mean, you're losing a whole group of people here.
Yeah, but you probably
you can go to football. You can go to football and say, "Hey, move your games tonight. And they'd gladly do it. Yeah. They'd gladly do it. Football doesn't want to hurt baseball, and baseball really doesn't want to hurt football. They're not in the same competition because they're two different fans.
Yeah. Well, I think that you have night baseball on the East Coast. I know when I was in New York shooting Murphy Brown, I didn't stay up for that 15, 16, 17 inning Dodger game, World Series game, because it was going to 2 o'clock in the morning. Even the regulation games go to midnight. I don't.
12-year-old kids certainly ain't going to be able to stay up and watch it. So if it's a school night or something.
And I'll say this for Derek: the 70-year-old man's not going to stay up to midnight either. Yeah. to watch.
Derek doesn't look 70.
Close. Push-ups. Anyway, but again, now with Ohtani going to sign a $600 million contract. Moving forward, the salaries are also driving kids out of baseball because a fireman can't afford a $200, $300 ticket to a ball game, unless he's a former bookie
bookmaker
who's cashed in.
Pay $300 for the game and lose $1,000 out at the same time.
Well, O'Malley didn't raise ticket prices for 30 years.
Wow.
When he opened, his ticket price were $8, and that was the highest ticket price in the National League. But when he turned the club over to his son, it was still $8 30 years later. And people forget that. He knew that if he got you in the park, he could get your money. And that's pretty much true of everything. And I don't think they market the game as well as they can, because there's so many times I had a grandfather come up to me today at the golf course. He said, "Would you sign a baseball for my grandson? He's playing on a high school team in Texas." And I told him that every now and then I get put in your group. Would you sign? I said, absolutely. And you'd be surprised how valuable a baseball is if you give it to a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You take him to a ball game. I mean, there was another kid in the same golf tournament we're playing in today. And now he's 26, 27 years old. But he said, my dad stopped you at a ball game one day, and he said that we couldn't catch a ball, and you went back to the locker room and got me a baseball. Those kids remember that forever.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Yep. Well, you know what I'm going to remember forever? This interview with Joe West.
Another segue, another superb segue.
another superb segue, because we've got Artis Gilmore waiting in the wings. We're going to get to Artis. But Joe, you've done it again, pal.
We'll give Artis my best. It was good to see you guys.
Thanks very much, Joe. Thanks for everything, pal. Thanks for coming on. Good show.
Joe's always a delight.
Yeah, he's good.
He's always
a terrific guy.
Well, I know another delight was
personal friend of yours.
Personal friend of mine for 52 years. Wow. Derek, how old are you?
52.
How about that? That's another good segue. Is it possible to get a basketball Hall of Famer, great Final Four member, Chicago Bulls, Kentucky Colonels, San Antonio Spurs?
Woo.
Great.
Artis Gilmore.
Artis Gilmore. How
are
you, my friend?
Artis Gilmore himself. Look at this. The man.
Smile,
the
smile, Artis. Pretend you're happy to be here.
All right. Yes.
The big fella himself.
All right.
Good to see you again, pal. Really good to see you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll start off by asking you, Artis. We've got no number one seeds in the Final Four this year. How do you feel about that?
Wow. You know, Frank, this is the reason they call it March Madness. You know, nobody, I think, what was about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little longer, this gentleman said he would put up $1 billion for anybody could pick, you know, a perfect bracket in NCAA tournament. I don't think anybody, maybe somebody had.
No,
nobody's ever done it, I don't think.
No, and there was nobody even going into the Sweet 16 had a perfect bracket. So with that in mind, I'll offer $2 billion of Billy's money to anybody who can pick a perfect bracket.
I give $3 billion to anybody stupid enough to believe that I might have $2 billion.
Well, you know, it's ironic that now they've started a new phase. You know, with the 16 teams that were left going into the weekend, they pick a new brackets with only the 16. But I guess that Houston's out, Alabama's out, so probably 3/4 of the field is already out. But what, you know, Artis, you played in the 1970s finals. What's your memory?
Yes.
What's your memories of those days and that tournament going into it, starting out with the play-in against Western Kentucky, going through Iowa, going through Kentucky, going through St. Bonaventure. You guys had to win a lot of games to even reach UCLA. What do you remember about that tournament at Jacksonville University?
Well, Frank, you know, they use that terminology like pouring water on a duck's back. You know what happens there? The water just goes right off, and that memory is so long ago. You know, you're talking about over 52 years ago. No, but that's great. I would never forget that memory. It was a special time for a little small school like Jacksonville University to be able to advance. And I think we had a student population of 2,200. I mean, the JU, we had probably 2,200 kids that was able to be supportive of that particular time in the university. And playing against, you know, UCLA, that was a special event. But, you know, winning the regions, knocking off Kentucky, University of Kentucky. And I remember that final score against my old colleague and dear friend, Dan Issel, who played for Kentucky. The final score in that game was 100 to 106. And that was a big win. And that elevated us to be able to play, make it to the Final Four, and which was UCLA, New Mexico State, and St. Bonaventure, and of course Jacksonville University, UCLA. And Bob Lanier, who was to play in that game, received an injury, and in fact he fell with Chris Ford, back, and Chris was in the league for a number of years, and
Chris Ford
yes.
later coached the Celtics, right?
Yes, he coached the Celtics for a number of years. He played for them, but he was injured in that game, and we ended up playing against a center named Matt Gant, and Matt was really up for that game, and he played extremely well, and we played extremely poor, and that seems like that was kind of the turn or the momentum for Jacksonville University, and then we were playing pretty much heads up with UCLA pretty much the first half, and Coach Wooten went in at halftime and made some adjustments, and we were just not able to match that level of performance in the second half.
Yeah, experience. I know John Wooden was a more experienced coach than Joe Williams and Tom Wasden were, specifically. And he made some adjustments there that Joe may have made later in his career, but he was a young coach. He was 38 years old, 37 years old, going against the master. And the experience of the coaching staff, I think, was borne out in the end.
Let me ask you both a question, because I'm not sure, but you guys obviously both will know. How many guys on Jacksonville U, outside of yourself, Artis, went on to become pros, and how many guys on UCLA went on to become pros? I know Spencer Haywood did.
Well, Spencer Haywood was.
I'm sorry.
Sidney Wicks.
Sidney Wicks, I meant, yeah. How many guys went from UCLA went on to become pros, and how many guys from Jacksonville U, just you, went on to become pros from Jacksonville U, right?
Well, actually, it was Rex Morgan and of course myself.
And Rex lasted in a year, about 2 years, and he was the number two. Rex was the number 2 draft choice of the Boston Celtics, and
I think that entire almost first 5 of UCLA played. Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe, Henry Bibby, and John Vallely.
And Patterson too. I think Patterson played a little while also.
Yes, Steve Patterson.
Yep.
He also.
So Rex was the number 2 draft choice of the Celtics coming out in 1970. The number 1 draft choice was Dave Cowens. And the way I heard the story, Rex, used to like to party. Let's say party. That's a nice way to say drink. But I hear that Red Auerbach cut Rex because he was spending too much time partying with Dave Cowens, and he thought that Rex was a
corrupt Cowens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, my point is, without Artis, that team doesn't even come close to being anywhere. I mean, he had no supporting cast.
Well, he had a really good supporting cast.
Yeah.
Pembroke could have played. Vaughn Wedeking could have played the guard. He was, if we had a 3-point play now, Vaughn would be unbelievable, because Vaughn would stay at the top of the key and throw those 3-pointers down left and right.
And likewise with Rex as well.
Yep.
Rex had good range.
Yep. So we had a good team. We lost 2 games that year. So Artis had some good support. We lost the other game we lost was to Dave Cowens at Florida State. So that was a pretty good year.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, an amazing year. But I'm just saying that UCLA had,
a
lot of players that went into the pros, where Artis was.
Yes, for sure.
Didn't have the supporting cast that they had,
So Artis, I noticed that the veteran college teams, the teams that have played together longer, are doing exceedingly well this year, as opposed to the one and dones. Can you comment on that at all? I mean, Miami. The Miami area's got 2 teams, Florida Atlantic and Miami, that are still around. That's quite remarkable.
and of course, Florida Atlantic. I think this is their first bout, and then of course, Florida, Miami. They were there last year, made the Sweet 16. So, as you indicated before, Frank, that's right. Having those veteran players who had a chance to spend some time together, it worked for everybody except us at JU. We lost Rex Morgan, we lost Rod McIntyre, we lost a number of those seniors, but we had a great team that was coming up with Harold Fox and of course Ernie Fleming. But unfortunately, we didn't have that same type of
chemistry.
Unique.
Yeah.
Yes.
But do you think that the lack of chemistry was part of the factor that Joe Williams, the head coach Joe Williams, left and was replaced by the assistant coach Tom Wasden, who Tom, I don't want to say had a more cavalier approach to basketball than Joe, but Joe was really the brains of that outfit. And I think that was as big a loss because I think Joe would have held Harold Fox in check a little bit better than Tom did.
Well, you're right. I think Joe's method of approaching the players, just to give you one example, his relationship and how the way he communicated with the guys, just Joe for an experience, for one little incident that happened in practice, things were not really going really well in practice. And so Joe walked over next to me and he blew the whistle. And he said, guys, I need you to come here and help. You see how fast Artis got here? You see, I need everybody working on the same page, doing basically the same thing. And those type of ways of means of communicating was just kind of unique in Joe's method of handling.
Yeah, I recall. I recall the year we went to the finals. Joe Williams was making between $12,000 and $15,000 a year to coach that team. JU,
about 8 or 9,000.
Yeah, well, JU couldn't give him a raise to 18,000 after making it to the finals.
Amazing.
Of the NCAA tournament. So Joe left for more money, $3,000 more money at Furman, and then he took Furman to the NCAA tournament, where they were in it this year. Furman advanced into the tournament this year, and then on to Florida State. So for want of $3,000, maybe JU lost an opportunity to be in the Final Four again. Because
he was a real good coach.
He was a
really good coach.
He was a really good coach. Really good coach.
Let me ask you a question, Artis. Not segueing from the Final Four so much, but what's your fondest memory on a basketball court for you personally? What was your the one that?
Well, Billy, are you referencing to on the collegiate level?
No, every level, any level. Just your fondest memory.
Well, I said the best moment. I mean, I had to work. I had a game the following day, and my first daughter was born the night before.
Wow!
And that was just my oldest daughter was born. And
was that with the Bulls?
That was with Louisville.
Kentucky Colonels.
Of course, on the court, personally winning a championship in 1975, and I think a number of reasons. I can pick a number of reasons why I didn't really make it in the NBA at that level, and it all stems back from the ABA. But looking back, Billy, that probably was my exciting experience, having a child, and of course winning the championship. And once again, that reflecting back on those earlier memories at Jacksonville when we had that one team and we were able to excel and make it to the finals. And you know, just a couple other things to throw in there, Frank. You know, you mentioned the fact that how difficult it was, the racial tension in the country at that during that time. You know, and
The 60s in Jacksonville.
just a couple years before, you know, Martin Luther King was assassinated in
Memphis.
in Memphis, and the other thing is that we here in Jacksonville were in a very tense relationship, but we did something. We was able to do something very, very special here in this community by advancing and accelerating into the NCAA Final Four, and that allowed. I mean, when we returned, it sort of galvanized and changed kind of the mindset of the individual. I mean, this was the entire state of Florida, you know, and most everybody was pulling for a little underdog Cinderella team like Jacksonville University. And those things certainly is really stand out in my mind and thoughts how special my career was, Billy, throughout the years. Just, I mean, there's a number of things that happened that was really, really special. But those memories, especially winning the championship, having my first child.
Yeah. That's.
And I want to interject that if anybody wants to see a movie that we did collectively called Jacksonville Who, it's on Amazon. It's on YouTube. Just go in and Google Jacksonville Who ? And you can see a 1 hour movie that features Artis Gilmore and a 1969-1970 Dolphin team. It's a
terrific documentary.
Well,
you
thank you.
don't have to say it. It's a terrific documentary.
I would have said it, but I shouldn't have.
And it also touches on the racial tension. That was in Florida, Jacksonville, especially at that time.
Yeah, because in the SEC at that era, they had one black starter in the entire SEC, and JU was starting 3 black players, and it really brought the city all together. And it's
a terrific documentary. It's well worth your time for anybody.
It's a fitting tribute to Artis and his teammates because they did more for racial equality than anybody else did at that time. So
you know, I got a pet peeve, and I'm going to bring it up, and a theory, and it drives me crazy when guys of this era, like guys my son's age, 35, 36, or whatever. And they ask him who's the greatest basketball player that ever lived. And of course, they go into the typical argument: is it Bird? Is it Magic? Is it Jordan? Is it Kobe? And they never bring in guys like Wilt or like yourself or
Kareem.
Kareem, exactly. Russell. And to me, I think it's because of the TV exposure now. That you get to see more games on TV, and it's planted on people's minds that this guy did this and this guy could do that. And you guys didn't get that kind of exposure, even in the pros. They'd have one game a week on maybe on CBS or something like that, 3 games a week.
Well, I'll answer for Artis because when we won and beat Kentucky, we were only on regional television. We weren't on national TV. So they had 4 regions then, East, West, North, and South, or whatever they were. And that's where in the North got the North region, the South got the South region, the Midwest got the Midwest region, and the Far West got the Far West.
But these guys come up with all the modern players, the players that they've seen the most on television. Would you agree with that? That seems to me that the television exposure is what say, oh, this guy's the greatest ever, because, where, the records would indicate that Chamberlain certainly has to be considered in the top 3, if not,
You played against Wilt, didn't you, Artis?
In one game, I played against him. It was the All-Star game when they were really dealing with the ABA and the NBA merger. In fact, that was after that they had played 2 All-Star games, and that game had become very, very popular. The NBA playing against the ABA, and in fact, they had it in Nassau Coliseum. They hosted in Nassau Coliseum, and it was a really great game. Rick Barry had just transferred back to the ABA, and he was playing with us. And it was that particular game was a really, really good game. Exciting. Had Oscar Robertson, had a number of the great players. And shortly after that, the NBA said, no, that's too big. We got something else in mind.
Yeah.
And so they eliminated that very quickly.
Yeah, because they were afraid they were going to lose.
Yes.
And that's going back to your 75 Kentucky Colonels team that won the ABA championship. By the way, can you show us that ring you're wearing? Or is that your Hall of Fame ring?
Something has happened here. I don't have a picture of you guys.
Oh.
I can't see you guys. I've been for the last 5 minutes or so. So.
Well, we can go on as long as we can see you. That's what's important.
Okay.
You can hear us, right? That's.
I can hear you, yes, but I can't see.
You can call your technician.
Yeah, you can call your technician.
Yeah, he's back. Okay, now my technician just came back in.
Okay.
You're back in the ball game, huh?
Okay.
Why don't you hold it up a little bit higher?
Yeah, we got.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
That's a 75 ABA ring, or is that the Hall of Fame?
That's a 75 ABA ring.
Wow.
Yeah, because I want to say that I truly believe that you guys had the greatest team in basketball that season. Because if you had played Golden State wouldn't stand a chance, because you had 3 Hall of Famers on the team. Yourself, Dan Issel, and little Louis Dampier.
And of course, Hall of Fame coach.
And a Hall of Fame coach, Hubie Brown. Exactly.
Wow, yeah.
I just want to say, on a normal person, that ring would look like a wristband.
Normal.
so getting back to the older players, Willis Reed just passed away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you play? You played against him, didn't you?
Just for a half a minute. In fact, when the NBA, just before the merger, they started playing the NSCAR. We played the Knicks. We lost to the Knicks, but I do remember playing just 2 seconds against Willis Reed. But I have this really unique story that I want to share about Walt Frazier. I was all excited about playing against Walt, and the Knicks had just traded him away, and he was really upset, trading him to Cleveland. And Walt Frazier was dribbling the length of the court. And as he went up to lay the ball up, I went up and blocked the shot and actually only knocked him over. And Walt walked off the floor, and he never played another game.
Whoa! Really?
Wow.
Really, that's true.
Wow.
But he was kind of frustrated at the fact that that the Knicks had, released him and let him go. And so he was with Cleveland.
Clyde was a big part of New York in them years. I mean, he was like, I used to go to the Garden all the time in them days when they had the Busher and Bradley and Clyde, and
the Pearl.
Earl of Pearl and Reed, of course, But yeah, Clyde was all New York. I mean, he was flamboyant too. He always came in he had the hats. Dressed like the Clyde.
He still does.
Yeah, he still
dresses like Clyde because he does the New York Knicks basketball games on TV. So, Artis, you played against Wilt, and you also played with and against Jordan. That's a tremendous span of years. Like 56 all the way to 2003, I think, when Jordan retired. What's your memories of Michael?
You said I started in 1956 all the way until.
Well, you played against Wilt. Wilt started in 1956. And he played until 73, and then you played also with and against Michael Jordan.
How many years did you play?
A total of 17, and 12 in the NBA and 5 ABA. And then, of course, I finished my last year in Italy.
That reminds me, you finished your last year in Italy.
Wow.
It reminds me of a Kobe Bryant story. When Kobe was on visiting Shake It Up, which I produced, which starred Zendaya. His girls were a big fan of Zendaya's, and so he came to visit one day, and I mentioned Artis Gilmore to him, and I said, do you know Artis Gilmore? And he said, yes. When I was 8 years old, I used to play basketball with Artis because his father, Joe Jellybean Bryant, was a teammate of Artis.
Wow.
So I said, well, let's get him on the phone. So I called Artis, and he got to talk to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
That was a nice connection.
Why don't you tell us about the 8-year-old Kobe Bryant in Italy?
During that time, Jelly Bean had really finished up his career with the 76ers, and then he was playing in Europe, and in fact, Kobe was coming along pretty well and as a player in Italy, and that was during the time we had a chance to play in the All-Star game in Rome, and all the American players get together. Most of all of us was made the All-Star team, and they hosted it in Rome. And it was just a fun time that we was able to get together and share some thoughts, and especially Jelly Bean, just great memories.
Well, another story, when we were shooting For Your Love in about the year 2000, we had Walter Payton on as a guest also. And Walter and Artis were big men in Chicago during the early 80s. So Walter said, can you get Artis on the phone? So we called him, and they had it. Why don't you tell us a little about Walter?
Nice.
Well, Walter, it's really funny. I lived in Glenview, and he lived right across the highway, not too far away before he built him a home in Barrington, Illinois, which was probably about 25, 30 miles away from his original place where we were living. But we would go back and forth quite often to each other's place. And I remember, we were really good dear friends. And he would come up to my house, and he was trying to help me with my brother at that time to really make a good decision, stay in school and focus and, work on his education, because he basically had kind of dropped out of school. He wasn't really focused. And then I remember Walter sitting down. We sit down on my doorstep, and it was dusk, dark, and Walter would talk to him about it, and the mosquitoes was biting. He had his shirt off, but we shared some great memories. I remember he invited me up to Lake Forest, where they had their practice, and invited me in to have dinner with them. They had entire steaks about an inch thick, and they had a chicken, the whole entire complete intact chicken, well done. And I remember just taking a little piece. I said, man, I can't eat all of it. And a couple of guys behind me, big guys, said, man, if you're not going to eat, you might as well get out of here and leave. But Walter and I, we share some great memories. We become really good friends.
I'll tell you my Walter Payton story. In 1975, we were with the World Football League in Chicago. And can I get a single on me really quickly? Yeah. So our team was owned by one of these guys.
Wise guy, yeah.
Wise guys. So now you can get off me. And we were trying to recruit Walter to come to Chicago. And as he made his visit, and as Walter was getting back on a private plane to go back to wherever he was going to, Gene Polano, who was the owner, had a gold pinky ring. And he put it, must have been worth $15,000, $20,000. He took it off his pinky and he put it on Walter's pinky. And he said, there's more of this to come. And Walter took it and never came back to Chicago. never came back to the Chicago team again. He went with the Bears. How about your memories of Muhammad Ali?
Oh, great memories. I do have some photographs of Muhammad Ali and I.
Squaring off, don't you?
Yeah, going out, going demonstration on the court at halftime of a ball game. And I remember we were playing the Nets. In fact, Dr. J was there. We had a big crowd, huge crowd, and he was and Ellie Brown and John Wine. They were really good friends with Muhammad Ali, and we were on the floor going through our little shadow boxing. And I said, well, just go through the motions, I guess. And he just kind of tapped me on the arm. That was kind of a heavy-handed little drop. I said, oh, man, he's a little bit serious here. So I started backing up. And I took the gloves off, and I should have went with the roll, but
you were afraid you're going to get hurt.
No, I was afraid he might just say, it's serious time, let me throw a punch. But, Ali and I become really, really good friends. And there's a place called Joe's Farm Room. And every time he would come to town, that's the place he would go. And it was like a jazz club and a combination restaurant. And it was really funny when he would come there. When he would return to Louisville, we would go to, in fact, I would meet him at Joe's Farm Room. And we would sit down in the diner, his brother, myself, and just Ali, and we would eat, and nobody would disturb us or nothing. I mean, somebody come by the door and peeped up from the jazz side of the club, but nobody came in and disturbed him at all. And it was kind of unique the way the people and his friends and associates just respected his privacy.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to say, respect.
I got a question about that.
Sure.
Just there's been multiple renditions of Muhammad Ali over the years. Obviously, various movies, portrayals of him by many, many different actors. He's one of my favorite people. I'm curious about, so having known somebody like that, this iconic figure, and the portrayal of this person by other people in terms of they are delivering an idea of what he's like. Do you feel like he was portrayed in any role close to who he really was as a person? Does that make sense?
Well, when I reflect back on the time that Ali and I spent together, it was, in a kind of the environment, like I said, we would, eating, but we never spent any time. Just looking back over the time, we would meet at the club and spend some time. But, from my personal time that we shared together, I do not see anything so unusual. I mean, obviously, in movies, they kind of hyped him up a little bit. Naturally, had to sell the movie, but Ali was pretty much what you see and what you got. He was the real deal.
He was a magician, right?
He was a really true magician.
He ever try to make you disappear?
Of course, I try to make sure that, I remember once I was driving en route to Joe's Farm Room, and he passed by me in his vehicle and with some other individuals, and all of a sudden, somebody rolled the window down and he started beating on the outside the car door and said, I heard that somebody was in this town that was badder and rougher than me. And they told me it was you. And I'm looking to see you down at Joe's Farm Room. You make sure you be there. I said, oh, well, man, is he serious or what?
That's great.
But that's the way he was. He just enjoyed life, He really knew how to live. He lived a wonderful life, except a lot of through the years what happened to him.
I'll tell you a great story about Artis. We went to see the first Ali Frazier fight.
Frazier fight.
Yeah.
First one. Yeah. God, not the God.
You got it on camera?
Yeah.
It was at the Garden, Madison Square Garden, and it was closed circuit into the Jacksonville Coliseum. Well, at that time, you had to pay a toll to get across the bridge to see the fight. It was like
15 cents.
15 cents. So after the fight, Artis drove a purple Barracuda, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Purple Barracuda that always had parking tickets on it from the JU police, because he would park right by the dorms, and he would just park wherever he wanted because he's Artis Gilmore. And the cops would come and they would put traffic ticket after traffic ticket after traffic ticket, but the university president wasn't going to do anything because it was Artis Gilmore. So
the amount of income he's bringing into the university.
So the fight ends and Ali loses and everybody's heartbroken. And we're driving to go back over the bridge, and I see this purple Barracuda at the side of the road, and it's Artis. And Artis and Harold Fox, who played in the NBA for Buffalo Braves, and then Ernie Fleming, who played in the ABA also.
And Pembroke Burrows.
And Pembroke Burrows. There are four of them are in the car. And so we pulled over. We said, Artis, what's wrong? He said, can I hold 15 cents to get over the bridge?
Between the five of us, we didn't have 15 to make it through the toll.
More to worry about.
That is the fact. That's the truth.
Wow.
That's funny story.
We always used to, when we were in the dorms, we always used to say, you buy, I'll fly. We go down to the Dairy King. Artis was always going down to the Dairy King.
He flew.
Because he always flew. He never had any money to pay for anything. That's pretty. So let's.
I cut you off earlier. I cut off the question about playing with Michael Jordan. So do you want to ask that question again?
Yeah. What was it like playing with Michael Jordan? As long as you stayed off the golf course with him.
Yeah, it really was a great finish for me, because I returned from San Antonio back to Chicago for that the year of 87, 88. And we started off, and it was that was just as they had just signed Scottie Pippen, and in fact we played the exhibition game in Dallas, and then they signed Horace Grant was under. They were getting ready to bring Horace Grant in, so that was the little pieces that they were putting together, and then I was part of that, and then all of a sudden, but I'm going to toss this little bit in there, because my contract was larger than Michael Jordan. Michael would have been making like, he was making like $300,000 or $400,000 a year, but of course that didn't include all the endorsements at that time he had, really signed. But the Bulls always had this slogan that they were never going to sign any players making more money than, and it was the same way when I was there originally. But during that time that I was with Michael, I would have, if I would have remained on that team, I would have been making close to like $800,000. Michael making $400,000, and that was never going to pass in Chicago.
I see.
But the part of Michael playing, Michael was very. He just brought about a special intensity, even in practice. He really elevated practice. Guys, fired up everybody, and that was our practice was like playing in a championship game. So he was preparing himself for the challenges ahead, and but Michael wasn't quite where he needed to be. And of course, I played half of the year with Michael, and the second half with Larry Bird. And of course, Larry and those guys was, had to reach their peak, and we were on the way down. And I had signed with them because I thought that I have a chance to get a ring, walk away with the NBA championship ring, especially with Larry Bird and the way that team had Jill and was together. But we played Atlanta Hawk with Doc Rivers and Dominique Wilkins. That was a great run. But we lost. We ended up losing to the Detroit Pistons, and they went on, and of course they lost to the Lakers. The Lakers won it back to back, and then Detroit won it back to back.
Yeah. So let me segue. You played in something like 500 consecutive games before you went out.
600.
600. Wow. What do you think about load management today? I mean, the other night, they recently reached 500, but the Lakers sat out Anthony Davis on the second night of 2 days in a row. I mean, what is it with load management?
And you played in All-Stars.
Well, I tell you, Frank, it's nowadays I think it started with Popovich and Tim Duncan and those individuals when they decided to start bringing players off the floor and trying to preserve them, getting them ready for the playoff run. And you think about the fans whom have saved for the entire year and plan to go to one particular game. They want to see the Lakers with LeBron James, and they wanted to see Tim Duncan play, and they saved probably for the entire month. I planned for months to go to this particular game, and all of a sudden, you get to the game, and the player that you most have a desire to watch, he's sitting out, and the fans, in the sense that they think they're being taken advantage of. But for the Lakers and Anthony Davis, and I just think about this guy. He's been injured for over and over for his entire career. When he's healthy and he's out on the floor, he has performed just at a incredible high level on occasion, but keeping him upright. And so for them to hold him out, and I guess I don't know exactly where the Lakers are right now at this time as far as the playoffs are concerned.
Well, if the playoffs ended today, they would be in, but there's still 8 more games to go.
On the note that Artis just talked about, if it's, say, a family's going to see one NBA game a year and that's all they can afford, and they go to a game, the Laker game, and like you said, if LeBron gets 4 fouls in the first half and they hold him out for foul trouble, do you think that the referees would go soft on, likely to go soft on a star like that just for that particular reason? I mean, does he get more leeway than the average guy on? Not that there is an average guy in the NBA, but the other players. Do the stars get more preference? You think with the fouls they go lighter on them?
Billy, I'm gonna try to answer that. I don't think so, but I look back, and I don't know how it possibly could have happened, but Wilt Chamberlain never fouled out of a ball game, and Moses Malone never fouled out of a ball game. And I only fouled out about 600 or 700 of them. Yeah, but I not at all.
Okay.
When you look back and see where early on, where the officials were taking money, and they were
Tim Doherty.
Yeah. I think they found a correction because they did not want that involved anything to do with something in a negative sense. It could destroy the reputation of the NBA. Frank, about NYU back in the day when or even Kentucky when all those guys took some money. And one of the things that I think they have done, they've elevated the money, the salaries, to a level that you shouldn't be tempted by any type of gambling. So with that said, I don't think they would the officials would jeopardize by, maybe in some sense, if there's a questionable situation and they could call a foul on either player, I think they would be kind of they'll make a decision accordingly, but not in a special favoritism type way, Billy. I don't think.
Well, let me ask you another question. 18 years in the NBA, 18 years in basketball, but pro basketball. You could have, you played against so many great ones. Who was the toughest guy for you to score on? Who gave you the biggest problem on defense? Could you single out any guy?
Billy, every night the guys were ready. Bill Walton, when he was healthy, tremendous player. Bob Lanier, Dave Cowens, even Dan Issel, they created different kind of a challenge. But, probably if you had to select one particular guy, it probably would have been Kareem,
Wow.
because he really created some challenge for me defensively. And the one thing I try to emphasize to my teammates, I said, well, listen, since he's forcing me to work hard on the offensive end, defending him, come on, guys, give me the ball on our offensive end of the floor. Let's make him work a little bit defensively, so he will not have so much energy on the offensive end of the floor. So,
and you made him work a lot of times, because I know more than once we had Artis Dominates Kareem headlines in the LA Times and the LA Examiner. So you held your own against him.
And that's not easy. Definitely not easy.
And that's not easy.
How about the biggest trash talker? Who? Anybody strict of mine? If the guy never shut his mouth off on the court? Or?
Well, Rick Barrett was always crying and everything, but probably Larry Bird was he was one that really did. And the short time that I spent with him, he was so much fun to be with. And but for the time that I spent with Larry, Michael was just coming up, and he wasn't talking. He was just trying to stay quiet and get it done. But I think later on, after he become a veteran and start recognizing what he was able to accomplish, I think probably then he started to really start to talk more. But the guy that I know is probably Larry Bird.
Yeah. In amongst that 600 games you played consecutively, I know one game you didn't start because we were in San Diego and Artis was playing a game with the Colonels against the Conquistadors, which was the ABA team at that time. And I went to pick Artis up and take him to the ball game. And we drove over to the game, and then the game started, and there's no Artis. I believe you left your sneakers. Well, you left you left one of your sneakers at the hotel, and they didn't have a backup pair that he could wear.
And that's amazing the way things are today. When we would travel, we weren't allowed to check our uniforms because your shoes, your sneakers, if you had to play that night, you had to make sure you had that equipment. If you check your luggage, more likely it was going to get lost. So you had to make sure that you had your equipment, which was a uniform and your sneakers. And that particular game, Frank, I don't know, I was out doing something. I had things laying all over the floor, and I just picked up one sneaker and put it in my bag and not paying attention and just ran out. See, probably what happened was I waited till the last minute to get ready to run to leave the park for the game and go downstairs and catch the bus. And I just grabbed what was right there. I know my uniform, and all I needed was of course a jock and make sure I had my sneakers. Well, I didn't make sure. I ended up leaving one there at the hotel. And I bought Frank. She should mention that you don't know how sick I was, and I looked at, and I just kept looking at. And I mean, said there's only one sneaker in there, but I'm just continue to dig through the bag. It's gotta be here, you know.
Yeah.
But that was, I mean, and just the expression on Hubie's face, it was. Ooh,
Well, I get, and I guess if you guys had a responsible for your own uniforms at the end of a long road trip, some of those uniforms would get pretty randy, I guess.
Oh no, you had to play games, Frank. I'm telling you, it was incredible that they would give you two jerseys, and sometimes those jerseys they were strong enough to run me out of the whole entire room was and they would be soaking wet. You try to lay them out and allow them to dry with sweat and everything else, and I mean it was just incredible in preparation, just getting ready for the game, and and not having equipment people, and that was one of the difference that I was able to experience. I said, man, I can't believe Boston. They had the trainer, bring the kit, maintain. Only thing you had to be responsible for is your sneakers, and they had the uniforms and everything. And I said, what a difference of an organization from top to bottom. And have a desire, and they want to win. They know how to win. But these other organizations, it was about putting a number of players on the floor, and just doing the minimum. It's like, having a builder come in and do just enough, not enough to really put together a competitive franchise.
That's interesting how you expected, how the Celtics organization really impressed upon you, that you could see the difference in it immediately. Tell me, besides pouring the amount of money that the NBA does now internationally and everything else, the amount of money they have to invest in the league and the players, how else has the NBA changed, in your opinion, just watching it since you've been out of the league? Is there anything dramatic that's changed a lot since you?
Well, the NBA has done a great job of marketing itself, especially on the international stage. And the one thing that I think that is really incredible, like you can go to a basketball game and you really don't have to see the game. You will be entertained by just being in that environment. And in that respect, I know there's been just an incredible change. The rules, the international players they're brought into the game, and those things as a whole have really changed the league and just the evolutionary process of the game itself.
Well, let me ask you then, what's your take on the most valuable player this year? Because you've got Embiid, you've got Jokic, you've got the guy in Dallas, you've got Antetokounmpo. We talk about the international influence on the game. What's your take on the MVP this year?
Well, I think the only way that you can really evaluate that is by wins, the team that has the best record. And you would assume that one particular player is most valuable to that team or into the league. You can't just select a player because of the fact that, he has more points and he scored, more rebounds. I think you have to evaluate it as a whole, his contribution to the team and to the league. What difference did he make? And of course, the individual selected players that you spoke of, Anthony Cooper from Milwaukee, that man, he's just been a machine, and the young player from Dallas. But I think they really broke his back when they brought in
Kyrie.
Kyrie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching a game, Denver game the other night, and Jokic, his arms were all scratched. And the last time I saw anybody scratched up like that was you. You after a game would be massively scratched.
Wow.
Of course, you were playing a different game, a different NBA game then, when they allowed pushing and shoving and arm checking on defense, and now they protect these guys like they're, princesses. But I think that you were pretty scratched up at the end of the game for sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Frank, the way they, now the exposure, international television, and the way they market the game, they did everything to kind of, clean it up, I guess. And they want action. They want the players like I said, it's the evolutionary process and change. The individual talent, I listen to sometimes, fans and the way they express it, discontent with the way the guys play. But they are so talented now. Individual, they can do things that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think about the training process, and you spoke about the financial accessibility that they have. They bring in their own dietitian. They can bring in their own physical individual people to prepare them for the game. Those things weren't available for our guys in our era.
You're trying to get 15 cents to get over the bridge. Well,
that's right. And that's a fact. That we were liking the funds. Billy, the other thing is that we were allowed to get, we were supposed to get $15 a month, for laundry money. Sometime maybe you might, you kind of wait and hopefully that those funds was going to be available.
$15, unbelievable.
Hey, Derek, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Well, I want to do some rapid fire questions because we are running out of time. So I'm going to ask you, some of these could be controversial, but I just your quick answers. So first of all, do you think Shaq is a good player?
Shaquille O'Neal?
Yes. Was a good player, I should say. Yeah.
He was a great player.
Okay.
I mean, he just was a little different. I think about what he was able to do using his power and just, really bring the ball to the basket. And it was a dunk shot, and he had some skills in the lob. Mm-hmm. But I think the way the kids were brought up in college versus when I was there,
Artis. Do you know what rapid fire means?
No, I do not. Anyway, I think he was good. I think he was a great player.
Okay. Next question is, how many times would you dunk on Shaq in a game if you guys played?
Oh, I'll get some dunk. I would get some dunks in.
Okay.
I don't know how many times, but I would be.
Every time you could is the answer.
Yes.
Okay. Next question. If we were to raise the rim to the tallest possible height, what would be the tallest height that you could dunk in?
Well, back in those days, I could probably get 11 feet.
11 feet? Wow. I was going to think I was thinking like 14.
It's 10 feet now, and so another foot.
Yeah, I was thinking like 14.
I
could block shots at the top of the backboard, which is 13 feet.
Yeah,
that's why I was thinking that.
Block shots at 13 feet.
Okay, next question. What's your second best talent? So we're going to assume you may have other talents that we don't know about, which we'd love to hear about quickly. But what would be your, if basketball is your number one talent, what's your second best talent?
I know what it was in softball.
Yeah, singing.
Singing.
And and playing the guitar and probably golf. No, Derek. No, I'm trying to think. I loved and enjoyed golf, but I never really improved. But my secondary sport probably would be fishing. I really enjoyed
nice.
I got to ask you a question, Artis. Do you remember the name of your college intramural softball team?
Yeah, we were Pylam.
No, that's not the name. The basketball team had a softball team before Pylam. What was the name of it?
I do not know.
The Blue Throbbers.
Blue Throbbers. I wonder what that metaphor is in relation to.
That's hilarious.
No vein in there, just Blue Throbbers.
No vein.
Okay, I got a couple more. What could I do to make you mad?
Anything. You mean now?
Yeah.
Make me mad, upset, frustrated, ready to fight. You start interfering with my grandkids, my baby girl.
Okay.
That's
okay.
So
Keep asking these questions.
All right.
On the basketball court, what would really upset me is somebody intentionally going after me, trying to hurt me. I thought that was kind of a lot of physical contact things happen, but intentionally trying to hurt me, that would really make me mad.
Got it. Okay, last question that everybody in the world is thinking about. So we got to interact with your family earlier in the call. What's the average height in the family?
Well, my daughter that passed away, and this photograph up here behind me with her mother, she was 6'3".
Wow.
And at one time, she and I was the only father-daughter that played in the Final Four.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Actually, the final two.
Yeah, that's right.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
It's probably not like that now, but I'm saying back.
And OJ's what, 6'11"?
OJ is 6'10", 6'9".
So I would guess your average family member is about 6'3", 6'4"?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, the big question I got to ask you, and it's just an opinionated question on your part. Who's the best all-around player you've ever seen? And you can't use yourself as. We can't say Artis Gilmore. Who's the best you think is the best all-around basketball player you've ever seen on any level?
Yeah, probably Artis Gilmore.
Excluding Artis Gilmore.
I think probably LeBron, because he plays all 5 positions on the floor.
Good point.
And defensively as well as offensively, Michael was just a tremendous, incredible offensive player. Nobody could stop him. But and he was a fairly good defensive player, but he knew how to get that help defense. Guys. The one thing about the Bulls in those days, he was in a situation where they had a really, really good defensive team. Especially when they added Dennis Rodman. He always took on the toughest power forward, and he really did a good job of.
And Pippen was a pretty good defender also, so Michael could get away with being the third best defender on the team.
Yeah, so they would help defense, and so Michael never really set up in a situation, because if you notice, Michael never fouled out too many ball games either.
Yeah.
And Billy, back to your question, whether or not they showed favoritism to Michael Jordan, not calling certain fouls, but I know Michael was instrumental in changing the game. When I remember Dennis Rodman said, especially the physical aspect of it, when Dennis said, I kind of caught Michael and pushed him into the stands just a little bit, when he was with Detroit.
Oh, right.
But they changed the game, especially physical play. And now, you get a flagrant foul if you you take a player out, and you can even get suspended.
I guess really Michael changed the game also, because after Michael debuted his long shorts, you didn't have to wear those short shorts that you wore all the time when you were playing. Last question. I know you're working for Panini, and I know you're working for Jacksonville University. You still have a great relationship with our university. Tim Koss has been terrific to you. You have been terrific to Jacksonville University. What's down the road for you?
Well, Frank, I'm waiting on the day when you and I can get out there and play some golf together.
Well, we'll do it
down the road. I know. I'm just going to hang in there, and of course, my grandkids are, in a situation where they lost their mother, and I want to be there for them. But I want to be supportive with Jacksonville University and maintain that connection as long as I'm healthy. And of course,
they just resigned.
Panini, I hope that we can, maintain our relationship for years to come.
And I know JU's just re-signed you to a new three-year consulting deal. So I look forward to many more days of Artis Gilmore at Jacksonville University. Thank you, my friend. Be well.
Thank you, guys.
Artis, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Fun.
Pal. Really, really.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for
Thanks,
coming
my friend.
Guys, absolutely.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Great.
He's always great, isn't he? He's always great.
It's funny when he was talking about when he was his Ali story. When he was clowning around with Ali, and Ali gave him a little shot, and he said, "Man, is he serious or what?" I don't know. There was you remember the writer George Plimpton? Real quick. Yeah, he famous for the movie.
Sure.
Paper
Lion.
Paper Lion. Yeah, where he played quarterback. He did the same thing with Archie Moore. He was going to fight Archie Moore, and the Gate Talese, who was a friend of Plimpton, said, "I'm going to set him up." And he told Archie Moore, he was a college boxer. He's going to come out and try and make you look bad. And Archie Moore had a lot of pride. And he banged him up pretty good.
Yeah, I would bet. Well, speaking of banged up, I think we banged up this podcast.
Yeah, it was a long podcast, but a really good podcast.
It was a great podcast. And with that, I'll say, well, our guest next week, I think, will be
Michael Jordan.
No,
Michael Jordan. Is he coming on?
I believe we have Julian Gant next week, so I'll look forward to talking to Julian coming up.
Call me Cat.
Call me Cat, co-star.
Julian Gant. Well, thanks for looking in. We appreciate it. And as always,
see you later.
See you again, I hope. Bye.
Next week's guest, actor and co-star of Call Me Cat, Julian Gant. We'll see you next week.